Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? We have a few things to talk about today, but first, really quick, I have to send a shout out to a community member who sent me a box full of goodies, and I can't be more grateful and thankful to her. Um, I received them like last week, and I've been so busy and just mom brained and scrambled egg brained because we've got a lot going on, and I forgot to send her a text, and I wanted to thank you personally, Nancy. It was just absolutely amazing what you sent, and my family and I are just so grateful for you. You're such a great friend. Thank you. Um, so two thoughts. Okay. Um, I find it awful that banks, okay, did you know that in 2023 banks made $6.1 billion in overdraft fees? That's $6.1 billion that banks took from people who literally have no money. Okay, just let that sink in for just a second. That's, who the hell do they think they are? And my second thought of the day is when someone says I made a deal with the devil, I'm sure you've heard, celebrities say that or whatever the case may be, or just your average Joe. The deal that may or may not have been made isn't something like give me your soul and I'll make you rich and powerful. It's more like give me your soul, betray your morals, and I will make your children safe and have full bellies. That's more along the lines of what we're dealing with here in today's society, in today's world. So, keeping on, 1 trillion American taxpayer dollars were stolen during the pandemic. Did you know about that? And about 70% of that money went overseas. It's unbelievable when you really think about it.
Transnational fraud rings, terrorist organizations, nation states, North Korea, nuclear weapons programs funded by our tax dollars, China, Nigeria, Iran, Romania, Russia, not our friends necessarily, that are being funded by taxpayer dollars. Could you give us some examples of how this is happening?
Yeah. So when you think about what happened during the pandemic, $1 trillion was stolen. 70% of that money went overseas. And I can give you some examples. In a Western state, they had more people applying for unemployment insurance benefits than they had individuals over 18. The people that were stealing the money from Romania were using it to facilitate other fraud schemes that include fentanyl, that include doing things to impact our democracy. On the insider threat, right, the first thing you have to say, and my dad was a public servant, is 99% of people that work in the public sector are honest, hardworking individuals. But there are some, and what you need is data and technology to root that out. There were examples during the pandemic. There were some examples even of last week where people got into the Medicaid system in a Western state and stole $50 million in less than 4 months. So you have to have these controls in place. Right? These aren't individual stealing, Mr. Cloud. These are organized criminal groups, both domestic and transnational.
So, Governor DeSantis, okay, if you're a Floridian or if you live here in Florida, or even if you're a snowbird, listen up. He is now pushing to eliminate property taxes here in Florida. And property tax is the most despicable thing ever, if you ask me. paying the government to own your own home, your own land is just absolutely absurd. Um, if he succeeds at doing this, our entire country will probably change forever because you know as well as I do, uh, once one state does something, it's more or less like a trickle effect or a domino effect, if you will.
Subject their citizens to higher taxes, such as higher property taxes, to pay for these spending habits. And you know, these property taxes, it's like you buy a home, you buy land, you know, maybe you buy the home outright, but maybe you pay off a mortgage over 30 years. And then, okay, you've paid off the mortgage, you bought the land, you've been taxed many times. It's like, is it your property or not? Just for being on your property, you got to write a check to the government every year. So you're basically paying rent to the government to live on your own property. And our homestead exemption is not strong enough to help these folks because the property gets assessed so high. And that's the thing. If you buy a home for $300,000 and you know there's certain tax, well then what? 10 years later, they say it's worth $700,000, and so, and they say, you know, there's homestead stuff that helps protect you to a certain extent, but you're paying more, and a lot of people can't afford that. So I think that that's a big issue, and I know we're going to be really looking at ways to bring people relief from that, because I think it's been really something that's pinching a lot of homeowners, particularly seniors on fixed income. But the reality is people have seen, and this is not the state, we don't control this, you know, we've not allowed any of that stuff to happen. We've been cutting taxes, but people have seen their property tax liability go up over these last years because the property is being assessed higher and higher. And the reality is you don't really know how much your home is worth until someone offers you money and is willing to pull the trigger on a sale. That's how a market works. You can say it's worth this much, but if no one's willing to come and offer you that much, then why should you pay taxes on that amount? And so there's a lot of things that need to be done with that. But as part of our DOGE initiative, our state task force will look into local government expenditures by utilizing publicly.
So take a listen to what our president had to say while sitting next to Macron from France in the White House about the possible phantom payroll that's been going on, that everybody was flipping out about the emails that people received from Elon.
Do you think that DOGE could benefit from more streamlined communications? There was that email telling employees to give 5 things that they've done last week. Agency has then told people to ignore it.
You're talking about the last email that was sent where he wanted to know what you did this week. You know why he wanted that, by the way? I thought it was great because we have people that don't show up to work and nobody even knows if they work for the government. So by asking the question, tell us what you did this week, what he's doing is saying, are you actually working? And then if you don't answer, like you're sort of semi-fired or you're fired, because a lot of people are not answering because they don't even exist. They're trying to find, that's how badly various parts of our government were run by, and especially by this last group. So what they're doing is they're trying to find out who's working for the government. Are we paying other people that aren't working? And, you know, where is all this? Where's the money gone? We have found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud so far, and we've just started. We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold, tons of gold. So I think it was actually, there was a lot of genius in sending it. We're trying to find out if people are working. And so we're sending a letter to people, please tell us what you did last week. If people don't respond, it's very possible that there is no such person or they're not working.
And listen to what Florida Senator Garcia's bill, SB 56, which is to ban weather modification, okay? It passed 6-3.
Is that obviously can have disastrous effects on humans. That's sort of been documented. The what amazes me is that the argument that we can have a licensure around this, but it's not actually happening. Whether it's happening or it's not happening, it's probably a good thing that it shouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. Especially if the government, the federal government, is involved. It's not like the federal government ever told us something that was inaccurate before. telling us things that were good for us when it wasn't good for us. I mean, we can look back just a couple of years with COVID and the shots and stuff like that. So I would rather err on the side of caution, along with what Senator Broder said. It's like, let's just forbid the practice. It's in statute right now. It does nothing to take that out of statute for us, because I just have a feeling that, somewhere down the road, and whether that down the road is 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years down the road, we're going to find out that some of the chemicals that they were using for this was harmful to us. And we're going to look back at this time and say, it's probably thankful that we stopped the practice, or at least attempted to stop the practice in Florida. So I'm with you. I am a yes, and I'd like to see it continue going forward.
Thank you, Senator Garcia. You are recognized to close on the bill as amended.
Thank you, senators. Thank you for that, Senator Angolia. It's been difficult. I have been I've been tiptoeing so as not to bring in particular, what is it that Maid calls it, buzzwords that separate us versus unite us to address what I consider now, after the research, to be a very important issue, which is air quality and what might be happening that we haven't been paying attention to. And Senator Smith, respectfully, when I said, Google it, I didn't mean it in a disparaging form. You'd be surprised if you go in and you do some research. In particular, you can go to the whitehouse.gov from the previous administration, was able to provide some very interesting information. World Economic Forum was also very, very involved, and has been very involved in weather modification. With regards to what Senator Polsky had previously asked, I do have some logs from the federal administration, from the U.S. Department of Commerce, which works with the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And you'll find that these are very vague, they're very vague reports, but then their thought mechanism and their process to just allow anyone to go and just spray in the name of solar modification is concerning. You've got one in particular called Make Sunsets Incorporated that did it from May 2023 to January the 8th, 2024. And then that, if you go in and you look for that and you Google their names, you'll find a very interesting article about the same people that are concerned with regards to climate change, saying we need to stop. We need to stop. It can't be just anyone going up there and playing with Mother Nature. We need to make sure we know who is up there, what they're doing, and prepare ourselves for the worst kind of consequences. I think that this bill is ready for prime time. Perhaps I shouldn't have been the one sponsoring it. I get very anxious when I need to prepare a bill. I'm a perfectionist. I think that this bill versus the 32 other states that ran a similar bill has a thought process behind it, taking in the complaints, regardless of how many there are going to be, tracking it, and giving some validity to it by working with the Department of Health that has scientists that can either confirm and validate the concerns, and then another thought process which rolls it over to EMS, which would mitigate and help us be proactive versus reactive when confronting any more of these concerns coming our way. So, with the inclusion of this amendment, I think that this is a firm and necessary standard, safeguard against unregulated weather modification and geoengineering activities within our state. It has been happening. By expanding the scope of prohibited activities and strengthening enforcement measures, we are ensuring that Florida's air, water, and climate remain free from unauthorized manipulation. This bill not only increases penalties to deter unlawful actions, but also establishes clear reporting mechanisms for public accountability, with fines of up to $100,000 per violation and dedicated funding for air pollution control. We are sending a strong message, health, safety, environmental integrity to our communities, which personally I think is non-negotiable. By supporting SB 56, we reaffirm Florida's commitment to responsible environmental stewardship and public transparency. And I ask all of you for your favorable support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kim, please.
And before I go, so Vladimir Putin, he says that Russia is ready to supply the United States. All of a sudden, isn't it funny how he's willing to play nice? Okay. He's willing to supply the United States with 2 million tons of aluminum, which will help stabilize prices. And the U.S. is the largest importer of aluminum, and this will help drive down costs of so many things. And supplying the United States with aluminum is critical to economic and national security. It helps create jobs, support innovation, and ensure that the U.S. has the materials that it needs to compete in the global economy. Now, the economic benefits, jobs, okay? The aluminum industry supports hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States. Innovation, investments in aluminum manufacturing can lead to new products and technology. Economic output. The aluminum industry generates billions of dollars in economic output. National security benefits. Defense. Aluminum is used in aircraft, tanks, and other military equipment. Infrastructure. Aluminum is used in transmission lines, which are vital for keeping the lights on and factories running. When it comes to the supply chain, let's talk about trade here. The U.S. imports much of its aluminum from Canada and Mexico. Investment. The U.S. has invested billions of dollars in aluminum manufacturing, including new rolling mills. When it comes to recycling, the United States has invested in recycling infrastructure to help meet demand. Now, when it comes to policy, the Aluminum Association says that the United States needs investment in aluminum recycling and production technologies, pro-growth tax policies to ensure investment, and programs to strengthen supply chains. Okay, so that's just a little bit of information there for you when it comes to aluminum, just in case you were wondering, well, why all of a sudden Vladimir Putin is willing to give us all of this aluminum, you know, and why it's so important for the United States to have aluminum. So there was just a breakdown for you. Okay, so here's a video for you. Ciao.
Основной импортер сегодня – Канада. Если будет принято решение открыть американский рынок для наших производителей, то мы могли бы примерно 2 миллиона тонн на американском рынке продать. Это не повлияло бы существенным образом на формирование цены, но, на мой взгляд, все-таки оказало бы сдерживающее влияние на стабилизацию цен.